Hi, it's Mayor David Stahl. I'm here with Sergeant Mark Csizmar of our Public Safety Department. We're actually right now at the intersection of Rouge Lane and New Brunswick Avenue. We're starting a show today to talk to you about pedestrian safety. Pedestrian safety is just not about the pedestrians who are walking, but also those of you who are driving. You have a responsibility as well. So I'm going to turn it over to the Sergeant, who's going to talk a little bit about pedestrian safety.
As you can see, the intersection's pretty busy. So what they have here is they have some electronic assistance here to help people cross the road. Now the Mayor's going to demonstrate what you should do when you come up to an intersection like this with the button. Now simply, Mayor, you'll press the button when you want to cross the roadway. And you'll notice the signal over there is a red hand right now. Eventually it's going to turn to a white pedestrian, and that's when someone should begin crossing.
When it turns white, it's a signal me to go. What should I do?
As soon as it turns white, Mayor, you shouldn't just step into the roadway. Basically what you should do is first look left, make sure those vehicles come to a complete stop, making eye contact with the driver. Look right also to make sure the vehicles across the way have stopped. And even where that vehicle is over there making a right-hand turn, make sure vehicles in all directions are stopped before you step into the roadway. Don't just rely on the white signal to cross.
Now this particular signal, I believe, also has a countdown. Or if it does have a countdown, do you know how many seconds those are usually timed for?
They vary. At the end, we're going to see here, it's going to switch from the white pedestrian. It's going to switch to a countdown. So. As you can see, the Mayor's crossing. It went to a 12-second countdown timer. That's how much time you have left to cross the intersection. But a person should never leave the curb unless they have the white signal to proceed. Don't try to run across the road with 6 seconds to spare or something like that, because you might not make it.
Guess I shouldn't have done that.
Well, Mayor, yeah, you took a risk running across the intersection. It's called jaywalking, and not an advisable thing to do.
I thought it was clear, but really, like you said, not advisable.
Not advisable, sir.
A few seconds of patience, I would have made it safely.
Absolutely. The safest time to leave the curb is when you have a white pedestrian walk signal. And again, watch the traffic that's coming by before you step off the curb. Now hold on a second, Mr. Mayor. When you see a flashing red hand with a countdown timer, that's not the time to leave the curb. That's to allow the people that are already proceeding across the road and in the roadway to finish their crossing. So never leave the curb when you see the flashing red hand or a solid red hand on the sign.
All right, don't gamble with your life. Wait for the next cycle, so it's 2 minutes of quiet enjoyment.
Take an extra 2 minutes, especially on a beautiful day like this, Mr. Mayor, and you'll be a lot safer.
Right. Sergeant, we're obviously at a busy intersection that has a light device. What happens if I push the button and I notice it's just not working? What should I do?
Okay, if you see the pedestrian signal's not working, Mr. Mayor, what you want to do is work with the traffic signal. Wait until the traffic signal turns from green to amber. Wait till it turns red. Again, looking left, right, left, make sure all traffic in all directions stop, and then proceed safely across the intersection. And when you can get to a telephone, you can call, if it's here in East Brunswick, 732-390-6900 and speak to the police dispatcher and let them know the intersection needs some attention to the lights.
So Sergeant, if I'm standing here and obviously there's 2 lines of traffic, I'm not sure if they're both going straight or they're turning into where I'm going to be walking. What should I be looking for?
We always talk about left, right, left, Mr. Mayor, and what I want to stress is left, right, left means more of a 360 view. You want to look at the cars to your left and right, but also there could be vehicles turning, there could be vehicles turning illegally, or a vehicle going through a red signal. So you can't just rely on looking left, right, left and proceed across the roadway. You really have to look in a 360 direction all around and see what's around you.
That's a great point, because actually I would have forgotten to look over like my left shoulder in this instance to see the cars behind me, just to make sure that they weren't turning right as I'm about to step out there.
Absolutely, because there's right turns on red, and again, there's people that may disregard the traffic signal, and we want you to be safe when you're crossing the road.
Thank you. All right, Sergeant, we're at the corner of Lansdowne and Rouge Lane, different kind of intersection, obviously no traffic light. What makes this intersection different from, let's say, the signalized intersection?
Well, without the signals, we are lucky at this intersection, there's actually a painted crosswalk. And what a pedestrian is going to want to do is be within the painted crosswalk as they're crossing the road. Now, when we're judging when to step off the curb, it's difficult because we don't have the electronic signal telling us to do it.
Right.
So we have to use our vision when we're stepping up to the road. If we were going to cross Rouge Lane here as if we were going to Hammersholt School, what we'd want to do is step to the curb, do our left, right, left before we proceed. Now, as you can see, there's a school bus coming up. it's hard to judge distance and speed when vehicles are coming. And just because it has its right turn signal on doesn't mean the vehicle's always going right. So we really want to allow extra time to make sure no one's coming at all. So after this pickup truck comes on the right, again, we might want to start stepping into the road, and then we see, hang on a second, someone came out of a driveway.
Now, just because the law says when I'm in the intersection and the crosswalk, that doesn't necessarily mean they're automatically going to stop for me.
That's correct. You know, you don't want to rely on a vehicle stopping. If you're coming up to a crosswalk, and if we're stepping into the intersection, if they see the pedestrian, hopefully they're going to stop in time.
So I watched you. You made actual
eye contact.
with
Usually I wave to the driver to thank them, and then we safely proceed across the road. But if you notice, even in uniform, I don't step out in front of a moving car until they stop and they see me.
And even as you were in the intersection, I noticed not only were you looking to your left, you continue to look to your right at the same time, just to make sure, again, we didn't miss anything.
Absolutely. Cars can come out of driveways, cars can come from all different directions, so you have to keep looking as we're proceeding.
Now, you talked earlier about depth perception and the ability to judge the speed of a vehicle. Obviously, we're out here in a beautiful sunny day in East Brunswick. What about nighttime? What different challenges does that present?
Nighttime is a totally different story. When vehicles are coming up, we'll see their headlights, but it's very difficult to judge their speed and distance. So you'll have to allow plenty of extra time before you want to step off the curb at nighttime.
Let's talk about the responsibility of a pedestrian when we are walking at night. What type of clothing would you recommend?
A lighter type of clothing is preferable, or some type of reflective material. And in fact, in my truck, I have a vest that we use that I can show you and demonstrate the reflectivity of it. Although it's daytime, you'll be able to see the difference.
Right, even like you said, when you see traffic crews working, or even the officers when they're on detail during the day sometimes, even though it's the middle of the day, they'll wear the vests, again, to make sure that people see them.
Absolutely. And like I said, right now, if you want, we can demonstrate. I can put the vest on and we can see what it looks like. If you notice, Mr. Mayor, even though that van had his right signal on, I still waited to make sure he was going to stop in time, because it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be making a right-hand turn.
Right, because he could have left his blinker on, not have been paying attention, been distracted.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you notice, I put on one of our traffic vests for better visibility, not only at nighttime, but also during the daytime, so drivers can see you. And people can purchase these at stores, sporting goods stores, things like that. I know joggers wear them, but it's great for any pedestrian if they want to be extra safe at nighttime to get some type of vest like this.
You know, as motorists, we're not allowed to use our cell phones, and quite frankly, you're not supposed to be texting when you're driving. Those are all violations of the Title 39 with respect to proper operation of vehicle. Pedestrians have an obligation too. I've seen many pedestrians as they're walking on the sidewalk, reading a book, playing with their iPod, clearly not to be attentive when they're walking. Well, what would you talk about the pedestrians in that situation?
Well, again, you know, whether you're a pedestrian, you're on a bicycle, a car, you can't be distracted. You know, you have to be, what I always talk about, 360 awareness. All around you, you have to be aware of what's going on around you. If you had headphones on, you can't hear what's going on. You know, if you're reading a book, your focus is down, you're not seeing what's around you, and that's when hazards can happen. And when someone's walking down the street, obviously you should always be on the sidewalk. If there's no sidewalk present, the pedestrian should always walk towards the flow of traffic. So we would not be walking in this direction here because we're with the flow of traffic.
Right.
As this car is approaching here, we would be walking against the flow of traffic, again, to see if they're turning, to see if we have to jump out of the way, something like that in a hazardous situation. So you'd always want to face traffic if there's no sidewalk, but obviously the safest place is on the sidewalk.
All right, great, thanks again. All right, Sergeant, in this situation, I'm in the middle of a block. I live here. My neighbor across the street, I want to go over and talk to him. What issues are presented with this situation?
All right, as we're standing here, Mr. Mayor, I can see a couple hazards. One, you should never cross at mid-block unless absolutely necessary. Two, you can see there's several parked vehicles on both sides of the roadway, which is going to create not only for your vision to be obstructed, but also the cars coming up.
Sure, I can't see past the car right now.
Absolutely. And a third one, you notice, we have a very busy intersection right there. So you could be stepping off the curb here when a car's turning that you can't see. So the safest way for you to cross here is actually to walk down to the corner where there's a marked crosswalk. You'll be able to see the traffic on Ruse Lane as well as on Lansdowne here, and your cross will be much safer to go visit your neighbor across the street.
And for a driver who may see, let's say the driver came by right now and saw us talking, if I was driving that vehicle, I should actually slow down because I don't know what you're going to do or what in this situation.
Absolutely great point. You know, sometimes when you go in neighborhoods, you'll see kids playing, you'll see pedestrians walking on a sidewalk. Drivers should slow down and be aware of, at any moment, somebody could step off the curb in front of them. So to pay attention as they're coming into some of the neighborhoods.
Right, and you made a great point, and we were talking earlier in the meeting, when you see a lot of pedestrians walking along the roadway, along the walkway, that obviously means something. They're going somewhere. I mean, when you see a lot of people in one particular location, what does that tell you?
Slow it down because something's going on. It's either a party in the area, it could be a religious observance, it could be a fair or some type of community activity in the area. So you have to be aware there's going to be pedestrians, and unfortunately, they're going to be crossing at places they shouldn't. So the drivers have to be extra careful and slow it down when they're going through.
All right, Sergeant, we're now at another residential intersection. No markings on the street. What is your advice?
Okay, as in most residential neighborhoods, there's not going to be a crosswalk painted at every intersection. But when you approach it, you should envision that there is painted lines. So when you're crossing the roadway, you're going to want to go from here we have a curb cut, and over there we have a curb cut with a ramp. So basically to cross in a straight fashion.
Take the shortest route, even though I may want to go up the block, take the shortest route.
Yeah, if you're going 2 houses down, you still want to go straight across the shortest route and then walk down the sidewalk on the other side. You never want to kind of go on an angle and be out in the roadway longer than you have to be.
Plus, as you're walking at the angle, even though I'm getting there with my mind faster, I'm losing sight of what's around me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, we're going to be aware. We're going to do our left, right, left. And again, looking behind us and looking in front of us, even as we cross. You know, I always say keep your head on a swivel. You know, constantly look around and make sure nobody's coming that popped out of a driveway or something like this in a residential neighborhood.
The other thing is pedestrians, not only do we have to look for cars, again with the warm weather, we have to actually look for bicycles as well.
Absolutely, sir, absolutely.
Because they have to obey the rules of motor vehicles. But again, many times as we're riding our bike, we're out enjoying the weather, we're not so observant. So again, I think the same things you talked about, the folks that are driving their cars, those of us on bicycles at the same time have to be aware of pedestrians.
Yes, and we have to keep our actions safe, and we can't rely on everybody else obeying signs and signals, so we have to keep ourselves safe.
Well, I think that's the key, is what you just mentioned as far as I'm concerned, is self-responsibility. Is each one of us, whether we're in the vehicle, on the bike, or walking, we have to be careful and be responsible to make sure that we are safe.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Sergeant, we're now traveling down. There's a lot of things I noticed. Obviously, we've got a school to the right, but I see a young lady up there.
Absolutely. Anytime, obviously wherever you are, but especially in front of schools and in neighborhoods, you have to be aware of people possibly stepping off the curb. Now, as you can see the young lady stepping off the curb here, we're going to want to come to a complete stop. And we remain stopped until she reaches the other curb.
So we don't go even if she's crossed the yellow line?
No, you don't want to, when she's halfway, you don't start going now. You wait till she's completely across the roadway, and then you begin to proceed straight through the intersection.
And I also noticed when you stopped, you didn't pull right up to the intersection. You actually stopped sufficient behind the intersection, I guess, to give her a level of comfort?
Absolutely. You don't want to scare her and come right up to the crosswalk as if it's a stop line at an intersection. You want to stay a little bit back.
That's a great point. Now, a little further up, we're actually going to come by Great Oak Park. We know that, again, on a beautiful day like today, a lot of kids might be there. So as you're approaching something like that, even though you can't see the park there, but you live here, what would be going through your mind?
Again, I'm looking at both sides of the intersection. You can see a lot of cars. There's going to be a lot of pedestrians. It's a beautiful day out. We can see someone walking with a backpack up there. You got a parking lot. You never know when a kid's going to run out to chase a ball or something. So again, slow it down. Although it's 35 here, we're not going to want to do 35 miles per hour through here. We're going to want to go much slower to be careful for the pedestrians.
All right, here, Sergeant, I see a lot of things. I see children on the right. I've got a car door open ahead of me. What am I looking for?
And again, like we talked about, Mr. Mayor, it's 25 miles per hour speed limit here, but I'm not going to go nowhere near that. I'm going to watch the kids, the dog, make sure they don't run out in the roadway. Here you have a lady opening the car doors you have to be aware of, and a car coming at us, a kid on a skateboard.
Lots of things are happening right at once.
Lots of things are happening, and this isn't staged, this is real life right here.
Right.
So you probably want to come to a complete stop, let the pedestrians and everybody kind of move out of the area, and then proceed. Like I said, you can't make this stuff up. This is real life happening here. And again, we have another child here. If he drops the ball or he decides to run in the roadway, again, slowing it down as a driver is the safest way to go.
Absolutely. All right, Sergeant, we're here approaching the intersection, but you notice the trees to the right are actually blocking a little bit of the view. Again, what would you do here?
Okay, as you're coming up, again, we're going much slower than is the speed limit. And as you're approaching, you're going to kind of want to look to both sides as you're coming up here. You don't want to just race up to the intersection and come to a stop.
Right, because on the one side here, we've got no hedges. We have hedges over there. So again, they present an issue.
Here we have the park across the street, and like we talked about before, there's going to be a lot of extra pedestrians in the area. Even though the stop line's back here, it might be cautious to slowly come up after you've checked. And again, check again. Don't just go flying across the intersection. Now we're going to make a right-hand turn, but still, I want to see everything in all directions, just to make sure there's no hazards while I make my turn.
That's great advice again. I want to thank you for taking time to watch this safety show, particularly the advice that Sergeant Csizmar has given you, because I know, speaking for myself even, you tend to forget the basics of what it is about being safe. We learned it as kids a long time ago. You always teach your children to look twice, but things get repetitive. You tend to forget it. It's always good to give a refresher course, Sergeant, and I think some of the tips that you gave today, are great advice, and I would encourage all our residents, the adults, if you're watching, have your kids watch the show. It's online at EBTV on their website. You can pull it up on demand. But spend a few minutes around the dinner table talking about pedestrian safety with your children. And if you've got young teenage drivers, reinforce the importance of watching out for pedestrians to them as well. So again, any questions at any time, contact Public Safety if you've got questions concerning pedestrian safety, and they'll be glad to answer your questions. Again, thanks for watching.